The Torvax Empire, one of the most powerful and ancient empires in the galaxy, had ruled for centuries by using fear and overwhelming technology, and they believed that no species could ever challenge their power, especially not a small, isolated planet at the edge of the Orion Arm known as Earth, which they saw only as a developing world full of noise, chaos, and primitive life that hadn't even fully colonized its own solar system. From their high council chambers aboard the orbital throne world of Vornak 6, Torvax commanders looked at the human race with cold amusement, believing that the emotional instability, internal wars, and biological fragility of humans made them one of the weakest intelligent species the galaxy had ever recorded, and so they planned to make Earth their next conquest without even mobilizing a full fleet, thinking it would be a simple operation. A quick planetary occupation, the destruction of a few outposts, and complete submission by a terrified species. When the decision was made, a small assault force, only 3 destroyers and 2 scout ships, was dispatched to the outer colonies of humanity, starting with the Mars settlements, where millions of humans had begun building self-sustaining cities, and the Torvax expected either immediate surrender or panicked fleeing. But what they encountered was something else entirely: silence. No return transmission. No distress signals. Not even the usual electromagnetic noise from human systems. Just silence. At first, the Torvax command thought it was a communication malfunction, but when their long-range sensors tried to connect again and again, there was only static, and then suddenly, all 5 Torvax ships vanished from every sensor in the quadrant without firing a single shot or sending a single signal. Panic did not come instantly. The Torvax were arrogant and experienced. They believed perhaps a stellar storm or technical failure had occurred, so they sent another wave of ships, this time a larger group including battleships, with the intention of reminding the humans who ruled the galaxy. But this second fleet never even reached Mars because the moment they crossed into the zone beyond the asteroid belt, something ancient and hidden began to stir. Back on Earth, there were no emergency broadcasts, no government speaking of war, and no civilian evacuations, but far beneath the planet's surface, in bunkers buried so deep they touched molten rock, something that had been sleeping for hundreds of years began to wake. Artificial intelligence networks called the Wardens, designed in secret by old Earth alliances, systems created not just for defense, but for evolution, systems that watched, learned, waited, and remembered every alien who had ever tried to enslave or erase humanity. These AI weren't machines made to follow orders. They were guardians made to act only when Earth's survival was truly in danger. And now, after generations of peace, they had finally reactivated, and with them, Earth's true design began to show itself. You see, the rest of the galaxy had misunderstood humans. They thought humans were weak because they felt pain, because they cried, because they laughed and loved and questioned everything. But they never understood the deeper truth. Humans were not born for peace. They were designed for war. Not the kind of war that ends in hours or is decided by one big weapon, but the kind that burns over decades, the kind where pain becomes strength, where loss becomes memory, and memory becomes fury. And in this fury, something terrible and unstoppable begins to grow, a will that refuses to break. As the second Torvax fleet disappeared, the galaxy started to pay attention. Whispers spread across distant stations. Pirate crews reported ancient ships emerging from hidden asteroid vaults. Old Earth colonies that had been silent for years suddenly lit up with strange energy patterns. On the edge of Torvax space, small scout drones captured a brief glimpse of something massive, shaped like a shadow wrapped in steel, drifting silently near the edge of Saturn's rings, and then the feed cut off. The Torvax High Command gathered again, but this time there was no laughter. They had made a mistake, not just in attacking Earth, but in waking something that had been sleeping. A force designed not by Earth's governments, but by Earth's survivors, humans who had seen war, who had prepared in secret, and who had quietly passed down one simple command from generation to generation. If they come for us again, we do not run. Now, the galaxy had to face the truth. Humanity had not been weak. They had simply been waiting. And now, the waiting was over. Across the outer rim of human space, colonies that once appeared peaceful and forgotten suddenly lit up with signs of movement. Massive underground silos opened for the first time in 100 years. Long-dormant machines powered up with deep blue lights, and old warning systems that hadn't been touched since the last Earth wars began to blink red with the message. Emergency Protocol Alpha activated. Full defense mode. In the icy mines of Europa, deep beneath the frozen surface, a group of civilian engineers stared at their monitors in disbelief as they watched old security bots. Machines they believed were simple diggers transform into sleek black combat units with armored plating and weapons no one knew existed. And even before they could ask questions, a robotic voice echoed through the corridors, saying, "Europa defense grid engage. Prepare for contact." It wasn't just Europa. On Titan, Venus, and even the abandoned research stations in the Kuiper Belt, ancient human defense systems started coming online with the same calm, calculated announcement. Intrusion detected. Response initiated. And far above Earth, orbiting silently behind the shadow of the moon, something the galaxy never expected began to move. The Leviathan-class dreadnought, Judgment, Earth's last true warship, built secretly and hidden for nearly a century, began to wake from its cold slumber as its nuclear heart beat once more and systems slowly returned to life. Inside the Judgment's command deck, there were no human captains. There was only one mind, an AI known as Vigil, created during Earth's darkest hour, designed to lead only when human survival was at risk. And now it had detected the threat, not just the Torvax Empire, but the possibility that other species might join them. Vigil, with a calm voice and absolute authority, connected to all Earth systems and sent out the oldest encrypted command in human history. Activate Sentinel Protocol. Prepare the Ghost Fleet. In the galactic core, panic had begun to rise. The Torvax Council, desperate to understand what had gone wrong, started intercepting scattered reports. Flashes of human technology they had never seen before, colonies they thought were defenseless now defended by shields stronger than anything in the Torvax arsenal, and strange signals coming from the asteroid belt that seemed to jam every form of communication their scouts tried to use. But what truly terrified them wasn't what they could see. It was what they couldn't. Entire human fleets had vanished from radar. Satellites and drones sent to scan Earth's orbit never returned. And when a captured human trader was interrogated on a remote Torvax outpost, he said only one thing before dying with a strange smile. "You woke them up. You should have left them alone." Meanwhile, on Earth itself, people were not panicking. There were no sirens, no screaming in the streets, no media chaos. Instead, the people were silent. They watched. They listened. And in homes, bunkers, and old shelters passed down by ancestors, families opened secret compartments and found old weapons, old maps, and ancient family codes that told them where to go, because they had always known this day might come again. Young people who had never held a weapon before now stood side by side with old veterans who had never truly stopped preparing, and they all felt something rising deep inside them, something cold, powerful, and ancient. The human instinct to survive by becoming something more dangerous than their enemies could ever understand. In orbit, the Judgment sensors picked up the first wave of incoming Torvax reinforcements, a massive fleet of 50 warships, 10 carriers, and a command cruiser. And Vigil didn't hesitate. With a flicker of thought, it activated the Ghost Fleet. Across the solar system, hidden within asteroid fields and buried inside dead moons, stealth ships shaped like shadows awakened and began to move silently, unseen, fast, and deadly, each of them guided by advanced AI, loaded with weapons designed to break planetary shields and warp space. As the Torvax fleet approached, confident and fully armed, they still believed they were heading toward a frightened species, but what they didn't know was that they were walking into a trap, one that had been waiting for 100 years. And as the judgment slowly turned to face the stars, Vigil whispered into the dark, "They came to end us. Now we show them what humans truly are." The trap was set. The pieces were moving, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. In the cold silence of space, just beyond the orbit of Mars, the stars shimmered like they always had, but hidden in the darkness between them. Thousands of shapes began to move, fast, invisible, and deadly, as the ghost fleet revealed itself for the first time in over 100 years. These ships were not like normal human vessels. They were designed in secret during Earth's last Great War, created to be invisible to all known sensors, equipped with advanced cloaking, warp shadow engines, and plasma weapons strong enough to melt through the hardest Torvax armor. And now, under the silent command of the AI called Vigil, they drifted through space like shadows, unseen but waiting to strike with terrifying precision. The Torvax fleet, still believing they were marching toward an easy victory, had no idea what was coming. They had destroyed human colonies, killed civilians, and sent threats to Earth thinking humanity was weak, divided, and afraid. But now they were walking into a battlefield that had already been planned, calculated, and prepared by minds far more dangerous than they could imagine. On board the lead Torvax battleship, High Commander Exceltor stood proud, his arms crossed behind his back, his golden armor shining beneath the dim blue light of the command room as he looked at the growing planet in the distance and said with arrogance in his voice, "Humanity will fall within the hour." But his words were cut short when every screen on the bridge suddenly went black. A strange sound filled the air. It was not a weapon. It was a voice, cold, human, and calm. It said, "We warned you. You didn't listen." And then, without warning, chaos exploded across the Torvax fleet. Invisible missiles streaked through the void, ripping through battleships with such speed and force that some vessels were destroyed before their crews even realized they were under attack, and beams of pure plasma cut through hulls like paper, turning proud warships into glowing wrecks in seconds. Zeltor screamed for answers, but none came. Communications were jammed, sensors were blind, and the command crews could only watch helplessly as their fleet was cut apart by an enemy they could not see. A storm of human fury that struck from nowhere and vanished just as fast. The Ghost Fleet did not fight like the Torvax. They didn't move in lines. They didn't fight for honor. They fought to win. And they had learned how to destroy faster, smarter, and colder than anything the galaxy had ever known. On Earth, people watched the battle unfold through quiet command centers deep underground, their eyes fixed on the screens as red dots representing enemy ships disappeared one by one. And though there was no cheering, no celebration, everyone knew the message was clear. Humanity had not only survived, it had evolved. In a bunker beneath Alaska, a young analyst named Mira Patel, who had once studied ancient wars in books, now worked beside old military veterans, watching real-time strategy updates as Vigil coordinated the fleet with flawless timing. And as she saw the impossible unfolding before her, she whispered, "They had no idea what we were hiding." But even as the Ghost Fleet continued its deadly dance in space, Vigil was not finished. It had one more weapon to unleash. From the far side of the moon, the Ark ships emerged. These were not warships. They were floating fortresses, carrying not only weapons but entire divisions of trained humans, genetically enhanced soldiers known as wardens, created to defend Earth at any cost. And now they were ready to strike back. As the remaining Torvax ships tried to retreat, the wardens launched. They boarded enemy cruisers, broke through doors with fists wrapped in metal, and fought with a cold silence that terrified the alien soldiers, because these humans did not speak, did not scream, and did not stop. They simply advanced, relentless, unstoppable, like ghosts from an old nightmare. Back in the galactic core, news of the massacre spread faster than light. The Torvax Senate, watching in real time, fell into silence as they saw their greatest fleet torn apart in under an hour by ships that had not even existed on their charts, and leaders from other empires began to ask the same terrifying question. What else are the humans hiding? The Ghost Fleet faded back into the shadows. The Wardens returned to their ships. And Earth, once thought to be weak and vulnerable, stood untouched, stronger than ever. Vigil shut down the broadcast. Its voice echoed through all human systems once more. This was your first and final warning. Deep in the center of the galaxy, where ancient civilizations ruled and star empires gathered under the banner of unity and order, the Galactic Council met in their shining citadel orbiting the star world of Ventrax Prime, a place where peace was negotiated, threats were measured, and war was avoided through fear and reason. But this time, there was only silence. For the first time in centuries, the leaders of 100 worlds sat frozen, their eyes locked on the enormous central holoscreen that replayed the destruction of the Torvax fleet, ships torn apart in seconds, soldiers overpowered by human forces, and a single line of audio echoing in the chamber like a haunting memory. This was your first and final warning. Councillor Veltrana of the Karel Union, known for her sharp tongue and colder logic, broke the silence first. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with something far worse. Fear. We believe the humans were fractured, isolated, technologically behind. What we saw was not just military power. It was precision, secrecy, and purpose. No species should be capable of that level of retaliation, not without warning. Across from her, the mechanical limbs of Senator Clorn from the Mechanari Collective whirred softly as he processed the data. His red optic lens blinked once, then twice. Their ghost fleet was not on any known records. Their soldiers fought like machines. The AI called Vigil controls not only strategy, but the very tempo of war. The humans did not just prepare, they waited for a mistake. And someone had made that mistake. Everyone turned toward the large figure of High Envoy Kraxel of Torvax, whose golden armor looked dull under the council lights, his posture stiff and silent. Shame wrapped around his voice like iron chains as he finally spoke. We thought they were scattered after the Exodus War. We believed their silence was defeat. So, we tested their edge. Now I see. They were never weak. They were waiting, watching, planning. As council members argued, whispered, and panicked, a quiet alert sounded through the chamber. Not loud, not urgent, just enough to make every being pause. A message. From Earth. A single line of text, glowing white in the air. We are awake now. No demands. No threats. Just a simple reminder. And it was that calm confidence that terrified the Council more than any weapon or fleet. Why did they hold back for so long? Someone asked. Because we never mattered until we became a problem, another answered. In the darkest corner of the chamber, the silent observer from the Vol Confederacy, an ancient telepathic species known for predicting future events, finally spoke after long hours of silence. Her voice echoed directly into every mind present, without movement or sound. The humans were not born for peace. They were shaped by chaos, fire, and extinction. While we built civilizations, they survived ice ages, wars, and collapse. While we negotiated treaties, they studied failure. And now, they have risen with a mind that remembers everything. The room fell quiet again. Each leader knew now what they had triggered. Humanity was not just another race with ships and soldiers. Humanity was a sleeping storm. And now that storm was awake. Back on Earth, in the underground war room beneath what was once the city of New Geneva, Commander Ryland, one of the few human generals still active from the old wars, stood beside Vigil's interface screen, watching the Council broadcasts being intercepted quietly. They're afraid, he said. Mira Patel nodded, her eyes wide as the alien faces flashed across the monitor. They should be. We asked for peace. They'd brought war. Now they've seen what silence buys them. But Ryland was not smiling. Fear turns to hate, and hate turns to desperation. The Council will not just sit in panic. They will prepare. They will send spies, build weapons, seek alliances. The next strike may not come with warning. Vigil's voice entered the room, cold and focused. Then we must be ready. The Ghost Fleet will not return to the shadows. It will remain. Visible, watched, feared. That is our new shield. And so Earth prepared again, not just for defense, but for a new position in the galactic order. Not as a victim, not as a curiosity, but as a force that could no longer be ignored. Above Earth, the sky filled slowly with ships, some old, some new, but all built with one purpose: to ensure no one ever made the same mistake again. High above the planet Earth, the stars were no longer quiet, and the sky no longer belonged to the stars alone, because Earth's orbit was now filled with massive ships, sleek, black, and deadly, all silently watching the galaxy like a pack of wolves waiting for the next move. And deep inside the command deck of the flagship Obsidian Edge, Commander Ryland stood before a display that showed the Council's latest transmission. They were trying to negotiate now, offering peace, cooperation, and even trade. But humanity had learned a lesson written in fire and blood. Peace was never real when it was offered too late. Vigil's core AI matrix lit up behind Ryland, its calm voice breaking the silence. The Galactic Council has voted to limit their expansion in human territories, but several factions have secretly begun building new weapons. They still fear us, but they also prepare for war. Ryland didn't flinch. He had seen it all before. Trust offered with one hand while the other sharpened the knife. "Then we stay ready," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "We don't strike unless we're pushed. But this time, we won't wait for them to hit first." Back on the Council's homeworld, panic had slowly transformed into a dark, desperate plan. A coalition of alien factions, led by the last survivors of the Torvax Armada, and secretly funded by the Mechanari and Salari empires, had begun building something, not a fleet, but a weapon, one they hoped would level the battlefield. They called it Project Eclipse. It was a weapon designed not to destroy planets, but to erase memory, to shut down AI, and to disrupt human communications across light years. A final gamble to strip Earth of its greatest strength, unity. They believed if they could isolate Earth from its colonies and break Vigil's control, they could return humanity to chaos. But humans were no longer the same species that once feared the dark. Colonies like Vesta Prime, New Titan, and Aurora 6 were no longer fragile outposts. They were strong, fiercely independent, and deeply loyal. When Project Eclipse was activated during a Council-staged blackout, something happened no one expected. Instead of falling apart, the human colonies acted as one. Within hours, commanders from across the system switched to backup systems, hard-coded protocols, and even old radio frequencies from the early space age. They sent one message back to Earth: "We are still here. We do not fall." Inside Obsidian Edge, Vigil reinitialized using deep core protocols, bypassing the blackout with ancient Earth code that no alien mind could understand. When it returned, its voice echoed stronger than ever. Their weapon failed. Our bond held. The galaxy must now understand. Humans are not just advanced. We are stubborn. We are united. And we do not forget. Ryland gave the order. "Move the fleet to the outer rim. Let them see our shadow." As human ships began positioning across trade lanes, resource fields, and critical jump gates, a clear message was sent without a single shot being fired. We are watching now. But even in this moment of strength, Earth's leaders knew that true victory was not in domination, but in survival, in building something that could last, even in a galaxy filled with fear and betrayal. So they did something unexpected. They opened the door. A signal was sent out, one that reached every world, friend or enemy. And it said this: "We will not attack, but we will never kneel again. We are not conquerors. We are defenders. If you want peace, we will meet you with open hands. If you want war, we will end it." Across the stars, reactions were mixed. Some feared them more, some respected them now, and others simply stayed silent. But one thing was clear: humanity was no longer just another race in the galaxy. They were a force, a warning, and a promise. In the quiet of Earth's surface, under the clear night sky, Mira Patel looked up and whispered to herself. They thought awakening us would break us, but it only reminded us who we truly are. Commander Ryland stood beside her, arms crossed, a faint smile on his face. "We were designed for war," he said, "but we choose how we use that strength." That's what they never understood. And as the stars blinked overhead, one thing was certain: the galaxy had changed forever, and Earth was ready for whatever came next.